All right, everybody, we are talking today about what is going on. What in the heck? Everybody is working harder than ever and still falling farther behind. We're tired. We're working full time. Tired of checking our dang bank account before we have to go to the grocery store. Tired of working 40 hours a week with nothing to show for it, right? This didn't used to be normal. When did this become America? And we don't even want to point fingers. I am so sick of the political discourse. You're the problem. You're the problem. You're the problem. No, we are obviously not in America's golden age any longer. And let's try to just explain what happened. Because my parents didn't have to put off going to the doctor because of money. My parents didn't have to check their bank account when they were working 40 hours a week. And we're just trying to figure out what changed. That's really what is going on. Because right now we are fighting, and there's no reason to be. Because the question underneath of it all is, why doesn't full time make you feel stable? Not super rich, not fancy, just stable. I can finally take a breath. Where you can afford food, where you can afford housing, where you can afford health care. Working 40 hours a week and affording those things should not be controversial, right? We're just asking, why doesn't 40 hours a week cut it? Why do people have to work more than 40 hours a week if they don't want to fall behind? And then this isn't just like some abstract thing, right? This is real life. This is happening. And the way that it shows up is in when you go to the grocery store, you can't afford the majority of the things, right? You walk into the grocery store and already know, oh, I got to get the cheap meat. Oh, I got to get the knockoff chips. Or you got to put off the doctor to pay the light bill. This isn't any kind of politics, right? It's just math. Are you bringing in as much as you need to live? And the majority of people are not. Morning, Congress. So, and the reason that we can say this is that if you needed to quit your job tomorrow, could you? Could you quit your job tomorrow? Now, we know that most of us couldn't, but I think we should think about what that means. Because if you can't walk away from a bad situation, are you really free? If you can't say no to your boss, are you really free? They have complete control over your time, your paycheck, your health care. You need money to get food. So why is it that Americans under 40 are the first generation in our country's history to be worse off than their parents? Probably has something to do with the fact that people are working 40 hours a week and still can't get by. And I think for a little while, we were all a little bit confused and ticked off and wondering what was going on. But I think that confusion has gone away now. We understand the corporations don't care about us. That's where most people here, we are not confused. We are understanding this problem has been happening for a long time. We are tired of people having to check their bank account before they go to the grocery store. Tired of having to be nervous about going to the doctor. This is normal stuff. 40 hours a week should cover food. 40 hours a week should cover the doctor. And here's what's crazy. CW, I appreciate it, because here's the weird part, CW. As soon as you bring this up, people lose their minds. People get so angry, right? It turns into argument. And what I think is that argument is what they want us to do, because we're not the ones in charge. We're not the ones controlling the economy. We're not the ones controlling the media. We're not the one controlling politics. And what this is about is the majority of Americans. We understand that certain people maybe doing better than their parents, but the majority of people aren't, because they're working 40 hours a week, and 40 hours only covers the basics. It's a math problem. If it costs you $4,000 to live, if it's $2,300 for rent, $1,000 for utilities, food, and car, and then you got $500, $600 of miscellaneous expenses, well, then what you are making is the exact amount as what you are spending. And then if every single job only pays you the same amount, then there's nowhere you can go to feel stable, right? That's really the problem. Because most of us can't walk away from our jobs tomorrow, because our job is the only thing that is keeping us afloat. So we are depending on the very people that actively disdain us, that actively don't like us. And one of the hardest parts is that they make us feel so isolated. We internalize the problems as our own. Oh, it must be bad with money. I must have chosen the wrong career path. I did something wrong. We all feel it, right? But if nobody has any savings, if every American is one step away from an emergency, one step away from financial ruin, that's not our fault. That's a rigged system. And the reason that we blame ourselves so much is because the more that we internalize it and say that we're the problem, the less we look at the system, right? All right, I'm going to hop down and hop back up, guys. So that's what it is. Imagine America as 10 people that needed to make bread to survive. 10 people made 10 slices of bread. One person up top has the food, or has the oven and the ingredients, but the other 9 people actually do the hard work. Well, in America today, 1% of people, one person would take 5 slices of bread, and it leaves the other 9 people to fight over the remaining 5. And that's why people are so scared. That's why people feel like they're not able to get enough, because the people up top took more than their fair share. Because think about it, the average salary is the same as the average cost of living. I'll say it again. The average salary is the same as the average cost of living. No wonder we can't make any savings. No wonder working 40 hours a week only pays for the essentials. It's really what it is. Our food, our housing, and our healthcare takes up most of the money that we make every single month. And when just the essentials take up most of your money, we are not going to have anything left over in case of emergency. We are not going to have anything left over to actually build some security. And if we are never secure, if we are always relying on that next paycheck to make ends meet, then we will always be relying on the people up top, the very same people who are legally obligated to hurt us in order to maximize their profits. I mean, look at healthcare, right? We pay them to take care of us. We pay them for healthcare. And when it comes time to use their healthcare, they look to see how much money it would either make them or lose them, and either give us or deny us healthcare, not based on whether we need it or not, but based on whether they want to make more money. So if you are working full time and still falling farther behind, let me get a me in the chat, because what that does is it shows everybody, we all feel this way. We are all feeling this. We are all pissed off. We are all just $100, $200 away from an emergency. That's not security. That's not comfort. That's one flat tire, one medical bill, 1 week of getting sick and missing a paycheck away from not eating. So what really happened is we lost control over the economy because working full time doesn't guarantee stability only when the corporations stop competing. That's all it really comes down to. Corporations dominate every single industry, and every single industry has 3 or 4 corporations that want to screw us over. So that's why people are falling farther behind, even though they're working 40 hours a week. That's why working 40 hours a week feels like treading water. Our productivity went up, but the pay didn't. And when our productivity goes up, but our pay stays the same, the CEO gets really rich. And that's why we've seen CEO salaries skyrocket. People are poorer than ever because we don't have a choice of where we work. 3 companies are the main controllers in over 85% of corporations on the S&P 500. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. And their whole goal is to maximize shareholder value. But what they leave off is the second half of that sentence. Maximize shareholder value at the expense of the employees. Because usually when productivity goes up, pay for the worker also goes up too. Because who would have thought? It's the workers that are the ones being productive. But when they don't have to compete, when there are no mom and pop shops, when there is no competition in America, then a couple companies can get together and be like, yo, let's never offer more salary than this. And that way we can always make more profit than this. Let's drop a me in the chat if you are feeling this, because that is a way to show everybody that, yo, one of the biggest lies they tell us is making us feel isolated, making us feel like we're alone. So we drop those me's in the chat because everybody's feeling this. So number 1, the economy. We have no way to vote with our dollars. If Walmart treats us poorly, if their employees roll their eyes at us, we can't just go somewhere else. They already got rid of them, right? So what we need to do is understand the problem. So number 1, they've taken over the economy. And that's where people are working 40 hours a week and still falling behind. And normally, if they had just taken over the economy, we'd be able to recognize this, right? But they also control the media. The media used to keep us grounded in the same reality. We would live and believe the same truths and facts. Now, the media tells us that it's informing us, but really it's trying to divide us because that's what makes them more money. So and their whole goal is to make sure we don't diagnose the issue. Because if one of us thinks that it's an earache and somebody else thinks it's a back problem and somebody else thinks it's cancer, then everyone's going to be working towards a different solution. So the more that they can pull the wool over our eyes and try to trick us, not just because that gives them power, but because then we're all working towards different solutions leading to a non-unified approach. So that's where the media is so important, because all of these institutions stopped serving the public. The economy stopped, the media stopped, and politics stopped. But the media was so important because that's really what they've used to pull us apart. Sulin, we're becoming a civic force. Shweety, good morning to you. But that's what this is. This is 100 organizations and 1 million movements that are all coming together to create a civic force. Because right now, profit controls everything. A CEO's bonus is more important than your family. A corporation is more important than your community. And we are coming together to point that out to people because that happens slowly over time. So the reason we can't move forward is because we're not grounded in the same reality. We have alternative facts, and then we end up arguing sideways, right? And that is why it feels like we're in different realities, because the media stops serving us, the media stops being there for the public, and the media sold out to the highest freaking bidder. So they've overtaken the media, they've overtaken the economy. So we can only work at their places. And then when we're pissed off and look around for the problem, they lie to us using the media about what the problem is. So no big deal, right? If we had a functioning political process, we just go to our politicians and we tell them to fix it. That's their whole job, right? To correct the imbalances in society. Well, we go to the politicians, we tell them it's the problem, and they ask the billionaires what they should do about it. Because let's think about this. The politicians work for who funds their campaign. They only got this elected position because somebody funded their campaign. So they are beholden to their campaign foundation, their campaign donors. So that is who they actually work for. So that is where the politicians work for the billionaires, because the billionaires pay the fee that got them their job. The fee as in the campaign finance. So the problem is that we all know there are more of us than there are them. There are 1,000 people that it takes to run a factory, but there's only one owner that's screwing everybody over. So why have we not come together to push back, to show them that we're the ones in charge? Because protest alone doesn't mean power, because just coordinating a bunch of people doesn't actually mean that you move the needle. What the actual issue is that we could get 10 million people protesting tomorrow, but then if the very next day we had to go and buy our groceries from the very same people that were protesting, if we had to go pay our power bill and pay our light bill to the very same people that were protesting, then they still have the power. We don't have anything, because they're the ones that control the essentials. And that's what it's really all about. Control of the essentials. Because we are working harder than ever and still falling farther behind. That's the problem in America. The fact that they lie about that is the main problem in America. And what's crazy is when we try to just talk about this, hey, 80% of Americans don't have any savings. That sets our country up for a failure. Let's talk about it. All we do is point fingers and point fingers at individuals. So what we have to do is just figure out what's the actual problem. Why is it that people can work 40 hours a week and not be able to afford food? That's insane. Why is it that Americans under 40 are the first generation in our country's history to be worse off than their parents? If you work 40 hours a week, you should afford food and housing. That's not crazy. I'm sorry. You try to work 40 hours a week and you should afford food. You should keep your belly full. That's not crazy, right? Because that should be so simple. That should be so simple. It's not one group. Anybody pointing to one group is also has the wool pulled over their eyes. Because anytime that you point at individuals or groups of people rather than the system, well, you're playing right into the hands of the system, aren't you? Because it's not one individual. It's not one group. We had to walk through many, many different places for us to get here. It is not the boomers. It is not them. They are a part of it, but it is literal complacency across generations, right? So, Father, you have just lied. And when you point to one small group of people and you truly think that's the problem, you are perpetuating the people up top. Because I'll tell you who is really in control. It's the people who control the essentials. The people that control our food supply, they're in charge. The people that control our health care, they're in charge. The people that control the media and the facts that we hear, they are in charge. It's nobody else. It's the ultra wealthy that have taken over power in our society. And Carlos, you're absolutely right. The way that we gave it all up was that we gave in to corporations out of convenience. We believed those corporations when they told us they cared about us, because for a little while they tricked us and it did seem like they cared about us. But then the private equity firms came in. They remembered, oh, wait, we were just pretending to care about them so we can make more money. So now that we've got everybody relying on us for their food, now that we've got everybody relying on us for their health care, now that we've got everybody relying on us for where they get their facts and their media, we're going to slowly turn up the heat. We're going to ratchet up the pressure. We're going to keep your salaries the same, because since there's no competition, because we control the economy, because 85% of corporations on the S&P 500 have the same 3 top shareholders. So since they control the economy, everything's a monopoly. And then since everything is a monopoly, corporations don't have to compete for salaries, right? And if the corporations don't have to compete to pay us better salaries, then our wages will stagnate. And if our wages stagnate, then prices keep going up because of inflation and cost of living. And we do recognize, right, that the same people who choose what they pay us, the same ultra wealthy people who choose what they pay us, are also the ones that set the prices of the goods and services. And they figured out that if they control what we need to live, like food, then when we go to buy food and they want to make more profit, then what they will do is raise the price of food. So then our wages stay the same, the cost of living goes up, and that's it. User, you're just wrong. It's not about what you're paid. It's that you're telling somebody who's barely hanging on to a life raft to let go. And generally, what you are paid, it used to be the productivity that you brought to the business. Now, what you are paid doesn't matter about how productive you are. You're only paid what the owner wants to pay you because there's no competition. And if there's no local businesses and there's no competition, when they offer us a salary that's too low, we either have the option of taking a salary that is below us, or not eating, or not fooding, or not having housing, right? So, of my mind, it's not that I'm behind, it's that I have different lived experiences than you. And as an owner of a business with 35 employees and 6 corporations, and 6 locations, and understanding that neither side really cares about us, whether it's left or right. And then you start looking at, well, why does neither side care about us? The political parties don't work for the people. Oh, well, they work for the corporations ever since Citizens United was the one funding their campaigns. So that's a big part of it. The politicians work for the corporations. So we've got those two things. Then the media is completely owned by the corporations as well. So they lie to us and try to divide us. And then over 85% of corporations on the S&P 500 have the same 3 top shareholders. So then that would be the economy. So the ultra wealthy in our society have control over the economy, the political process, and the media. So they have no incentive to offer us better wages, to offer us better working conditions, particularly when their legal responsibility is as a fiduciary. A fiduciary means that they are legally obligated to make more money for their shareholders. And if they are legally obligated to make more money, who they're going to take it from are their employees, their workers. And anybody that mentions either side, any politics whatsoever, you are playing into the hands of the billionaires. They want us blaming Trump. They want us blaming Biden. Both of them are like good cop, bad cop. All they want is for either them to be in power or the other one to be in power, because that means they always will come out on top. They still work for the same corrupt system. So anytime that somebody is saying, well, it's team blue that's the problem, it's team red that's the problem, it's this group of people that's the problem, no, it's this group of people that's the problem, then you're actually playing into the hands of the ultra wealthy, because you are misidentifying the problem. And anytime that you misidentify the problem, because what we're trying to do is diagnose the disease so we can treat it. So anytime that we are unable to diagnose the disease, we are unable to effectively treat it. So the corporations and the media, all that they want is for us to be able to not figure out what the disease is, to not diagnose the disease. Because the more that we cannot diagnose the disease, the more that we will all be pushing towards different solutions, and therefore we will never take the power back. So what it is that it sort of is somebody else's fault, because we're all born as helpless babies, and the world we are born into is not decided by us. So you didn't decide what language you speak. You didn't decide what clothes you wear. You didn't decide who your parents were. You didn't decide what house you were born into, right? And all that we're saying is that the person who's born to the factory owner should have just as much opportunity as the people who are born to the factory employee, right? So somebody who's born to the factory owner should be able to have as much opportunity as somebody who's born to the factory employee. But that's not the case in America today. The factory owner's child has a huge leg up on the factory employee's child, right? Jody, you are so true. That's exactly what it is. They are not out for us at all. There's nothing about protest at all of my mind. I haven't even got to it. Rob can fly. Life's not fair, but if you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to get some food, right? All that we're saying is that America's not quite in its golden age. And when 80% of Americans who are working full time don't have any meaningful savings, that's not 80% of Americans being unable to budget their money, to be lazy. What it is it's a rigged system, because everybody that's getting hot and upset right now is forgetting that I'm not the person that creates, the laws in this country, that controls the media, that runs the political process. I'm just simply a business owner who said to himself, dang, I really love having my employees do a good job for me. How do I make my employees work for me forever? How do I keep this going? Oh, I empower them and make sure that if the business does well, that the employees do well too. Because honestly, in most business cases, the health of the community is directly tied to the health of your business, right? But that's why it's so bad with corporations, because they don't care about the health of our community, because it's not tied to the health of their business. They don't care about the outcomes. They don't care what happens to you. They don't care what happens to your family. Mama Bear, All I'm saying is that America is not as great as it once was, that 40 hours a week can't get most people housing. We're not pointing fingers anywhere. We're just saying that Americans under 40 are the first generation in our country's history to be worse off than their parents. Jody Lynn, there you go. And that's where it confuses me, Jody, when we got people like you giving us your lived experiences, and then some people just come in and say, not true. See? Somebody comes in and says it's a budgeting issue. Pops thinks it's a budgeting issue. But you have to look at it systemically when it's everybody. A constitutional republic is a kind of democracy. And yeah, Mama Bear, that's literally what we're talking about, is that your job is the only thing that allows you to get food, right? You need food to live, and your job gets you food. Well, you get your job from skills and education, right? And Mama Bear just said that basic laws and finances are not taught. So let's go back to that person that's born into an expensive house. Well, they are going to be able to learn everything they need to know, because education financing is based off your zip code, is based off your property taxes. That's exactly what I'm saying, Sue Lynn, right? So White Goodman, you can grow your own food, but why is it that the doctors and our healthcare are ran by corporations, and those corporations literally could care less about us? Why is it that our food is ran by corporations and they care so little about us that they'll put Parmesan cheese in our sawdust because it makes them more money, right? That's what it comes down to. Scott, Scottsdale, I have a very successful business. That's what allows me to see that, the corporations are taking way more than their fair share. They're not paying their employees what they're actually making for the business. And because of that, everybody feels squeezed. Because everybody feels squeezed, they'll accept any job at any salary. And if you'll accept any job, even if it doesn't cover your cost of living, then that's how we get into the situation we are in America today. The fact that many people are working harder than ever, but because all of the industries are pretty much dominated by 3 or 4 corporations. Not at all, Scottsdale. It's so funny when people say that to me, because really what I'm saying is, as a business owner, remember, I'm a capitalist business owner, I think more competition is the best thing we could do. I think that we should have swap meets in every single Walmart parking lot. I think we should have farmers markets in every single grocery store parking lot. I think that if there were 20 hardware stores around all of Home Depot and Lowe's, that they'd figure out a way to get their employees to put on a smile, that they'd pay a little bit more. Because competition was one of the most important things that they took away from us, Pops. If you're older, that your name may suggest, then you would remember a world where there would be multiple general stores in most towns. Local general stores, not just Walmart and Target. Maybe you remember a world where there was a bunch of local grocery stores, so that if you went to Kroger's and you got a nasty batch of bananas, you could actually go somewhere else. But now you can't go somewhere else. And because you can't go somewhere else, that gives corporations the power, right? If Walmart is the only general store in your town, and Walmart knows you can't go anywhere else, then they have the power over you, right? That's what it is. And so the corporations dominate every single industry. Pops, I was born here. I am my grandmother was in the Daughters of the Revolution, and you just want me to leave somewhere? When all that I'm saying is that, hey, the country isn't as great as it was when you were a youngster, Pops. Because all that I believe is that if somebody works for a successful company, then they should be rewarded too. If somebody is busting their butt for a company that makes billions of dollars, that person shouldn't be on medical assistance, right? I will get to how we fix things in just a moment. I do like to make sure that we latch on to the diagnosis, that we all understand that greed is the disease of my mind. I'll address you real quick and then I'm going to move on. What happened to the boomers is that they were born into an incredibly productive era. For the first 30 or 40 years of their life, they didn't need to make any conscious political decisions because pretty much everything in life was handed for them. The post-World War II economy was absolutely America-centric, and no matter what choices they made, they were still going to be rich. Their fault, the boomers, was that they weren't thinking 20 and 30 years ahead. That how is it that if they have all of the problem, that if they have all of it. So they are also just products of their society. You are going through, like all these people made conscious decisions rather than being brought up by the generation before them and simply following in their footsteps, in their habits along the same path of corporations above community. Because that's what America has always been. It's about profits over people. So the fact that you are monolithing an entire generation, when I have personally talked to many boomers on here that are just as tired and just as quiet and just upset, that is not the problem. It's the fact that people monolith the problem into one little thing. So, no, the problem is people that think one thing is the problem and they latch onto that. So really, it's kind of your mindset is the issue. Because if we really believe, because here's what I like to ask, who controls all the jobs? The ultra wealthy. Who controls the entire economy? The ultra wealthy. Who controls the media? The ultra wealthy. Who's causing the problems? The boomers? No, it's the ultra wealthy, right? So that's what it is. We are not the ones in charge. Because in that, I think that is most typical when you look at politics. The politicians do not work for us. And Pops, the reason that we don't really care what you say is we've all seen the health insurance industry. And the fact that you think that we, the people, control the health insurance industry, the health insurance industry is there to allow us to not live so they can make the most money. And you think that that's good for us? Because basically we're saying the same thing. I'm saying that since the American worker, we the people, are the ones that actually make the economy go forward. Because you can build 10 factories, but unless you have 1,000 workers to work in those 10 factories, you will not produce any goods or services. So the owner relies on the employee just as much as those more than those employees rely on the owner, right? That's what it is. And it's the fact that our productivity went higher than ever. We made more and more money, except the money that we made only went to the company. They made sure that it was the executives and all the people up top. The blue line is what we made for the company. The red line is what they paid us. Rich, only 3% of Americans are classified as employers. 97% of Americans are classified as employees. So all that I think is that if somebody works hard at their job, that they should be able to be successful too. Rich, you were born into a world that you were able to start a job. Right now, why do you think they make it so difficult to start a business out of your home? Scottsdale, I have 35 employees, and that is how I know that we're all getting screwed. Because Emily is right. I figured it out with my employees. I said, dang, if I give my employees just enough to barely survive, If I give them minimum wage, they will give minimum effort. And I don't blame them. If somebody's paying me $10 an hour, but they're making $100 an hour, and I still can't afford food, well, shit, I'm not going to give my best effort, right? And that's so what I decided was that no, wait, I, number one, morally don't want my employees to be struggling. But number two, what if I gave them really good pay and then told them, hey, this is your starting pay. If you can make more money for the company, you'll get more money too, right? But you just say, don't be a minimum wage employee. So this is where your head's going to spin and burst because nobody's ever taken you this far because you haven't used your brain to think about it. So you're right. Try to get better skills. But my whole thing is, shouldn't everybody have a strong set of skills to begin with? Oh yeah, so let's see, where do we get our skills from? So we need not to be a minimum wage employee. So we get our skills from the education system. Oh yeah, that's right. We get our skills from the education system, right? So that must mean we are all completely equal in the way we receive our education. So the factory owner's child and the factory employee's child, they'll have the exact same education. Is that it, Scottsdale? Because if that's the case, and the factory owner's child and the factory employee's child have the exact same educational opportunity, then yeah, that's what we're looking for. We think that everybody should have the same starting point. Oh, wait, American education system is based off of our property taxes. So because the ultra wealthy person, school is free for the poor. My God, you're a fool. Because property taxes, because education is based off of property taxes. Hopefully somebody else is here with enough brain to understand this, Scottsdale, because I don't think you might. So the property taxes that we pay to fund the schools, so somebody that is born in an expensive house is going to have a huge leg up on people that are not. Somebody that is born into a zip code where they pay a high amount of property taxes is going to get a much better education than somebody who's born into a zip code where the property taxes are low. Neither person choose where they were born, right? Because wouldn't we all choose to be born to the factory owner? Wouldn't we all choose to be born to go to that school with the educational opportunity? And it's sad because all people say is get a new job or move away. And that's where I kind of know that I've gotten you because I'm just some dude on the internet. I'm not threatening. I didn't create the economy. I don't control the media. I'm simply an employer. And when I have my employees working and I'm able to stay at home with my family, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I want this to happen for the rest of my life. But then I thought to myself, well, if I could try to maximize my profits, but then I would be minimizing the wages. And if I minimize wages, they're not going to care about their job, right? And what I want more than ever, if I want my business to last for 50 years, I don't want to be the one that has to do all the work caring about the long-term health. So I really want my employees to be invested in the long-term health of my business. That's why I tell every single one of them, here is your huge starting salary. And if you make more money for the business, you get paid more money too. Because I don't want to be the only one worrying about the long-term health of my business, right? So in the sense that if you think life is all about extracting the most amount of money, I think life is about creating positive change for your community. I think every single business should have a purpose beyond just making money, because what value does just making money bring to a community, particularly if that money that you are making is concentrated in the hands of a few? I do not think that judging a business person based on how rich they are is a smart thing to do. I think the smartest way to judge a business's success is how rich the employees get. That's really it. Because how rich the employees get are what determines whether that community's health remains. And every small business owner knows that the community's health is directly tied to their business's health. But y'all, that's why the corporations don't care about us, right? Because our community's health is not tied to their business's health. So they will put sawdust in our Parmesan cheese. They will deny our medical care and let our family not live anymore just so they can make more profit. And that's because they're not a part of our community. So all we're really saying is that let's work and shop at places that are a part of our community, at places that care about us. Yes, I do, Straight. I don't know why you care about it so much. I don't talk about it beyond to make the point that I understand that if there was actually healthy competition, that you would need to pay wages to your employees to keep them, because if business owners actually cared and if business owners understood that there was competition, then they'd have to pay good wages to their employees. But the whole reason the corporations don't have to do that is because there's no competition, because 85% of corporations on the S&P 500 have the same three top shareholders. So that's why there's no competition. And when there's no competition, wages stagnate. Popcorn, the wage that I believe should happen is that no business should offer a job less than what it costs to live. Because when a business offers a job for $50,000, but the cost of living is $60,000, that extra $10,000 doesn't go away. It's the community that pays for it. That's where, Joseph, you're not understanding. Everybody that works 40 hours a week deserves to earn enough for what it costs to live. Not because of some moral goodness, but because if somebody doesn't earn enough for what it costs to live, that cost of living doesn't go away. We all pay for it. Did you know that when Walmart comes into a town, that it costs the community $900,000 a year? Essentially, because there are 300 workers that take up a Walmart. Each of those 300 workers are paid 20 or 30 grand below what they should be. So the rest of the community has to pitch in so those people can cover their food and their housing and their health care. So it costs the community 900 grand. Scottsdale, you made my point. So when Walmart came in, and there are literally no more general stores. I am 40 years old, and I think I've seen one general store in the back hills of West Virginia. I am in Maryland, and I don't know of any general store in my area. But good old Scottsdale says, well, if you don't like Walmart, just shop somewhere else. But that is the point. We can't. So that's why they have power over us, because they control the essentials of what we need to live. So everybody that is stuck with me this long, I appreciate it. We have gotten to the point where we have diagnosed the problem. David read my mind. We have gotten to the point where we diagnose the problem, right? Greed is the disease. To sum it all down, so here it is, Scottsdale. I'm going to go ahead and mute you because you're not here to actually learn. You're here to be a prick. And so what this actually is people think that it's needs versus wants. Dense people think that it's needs versus wants, because the rest of us that have one shred of intelligence understand that it's not needs versus wants, that it's the 1% taking more than their fair share. Imagine America as 10 people that need to make bread to survive. One person owns the oven and the ingredients, but they don't get the chickens to get the eggs. They don't wash the chickens to get the eggs. They don't grow the wheat and separate the chaff to make the flour. They do not know how to do the hard work to make the bread, right? But they rely on the other 9 people. Now, together, those 10 people all make 10 slices of bread. David, no legislation will actually fix it. So I'll get to that in a second. 10 people all make 10 slices of bread, right? How much do you think everybody should get? How much do you think the one person up top should get? Well, if America was 10 slices of bread, the 1% own as much as 90% of us. That's one person taking 5 slices. One person taking half the bread. And then the other 5 people who have to then compete over the remaining 5. So when anybody says that it's people spending money on their wants versus their needs, people just don't know how to budget. What it really is it's 9 people fighting over 5 slices of bread. Not because there wasn't enough bread. Not because they didn't work hard. Not because they didn't know how to budget. But because the one greedy person who relied on the other people took more than their fair share. And I am here as a business owner telling you that I could be taking more from my employees, that every other business is doing this. And that's why the employees fall short between their salary and their cost of living. That's why Walmart offers salaries below the cost of living and everybody's taxes in that area go up. Because if they only controlled the economy, then people would not be so confused about this. But what they do is that the ultra wealthy also control the media. So we are not grounded in the same reality. Amy, I'll get to that in a second. When I say it's not left versus right, we are not going to sit here and care about somebody like Straight Outta, right? Somebody that has shown us over and over again that their head is in the sand. We don't care about people whose head are still in the sand, Amy. If somebody has seen this world and this society and this economy and still doesn't think that, yeah, there's a little bit of a problem. That's all that we're asking. They don't need to be crazy. All we want, Amy, is for people to go, there's a little bit of an issue. Maybe I had gotten tricked. We don't need to be friends with them. They just need to be there in good faith, right? In good faith. So, because if somebody comes in and they're going, oh, Biden was the problem. Even if somebody comes in and goes, oh, Trump is the problem. There you go, Amy. Yup. Because it really is both sides, right? It really is both sides. Because one side says, I will not, unless you label yourself and say that you're this and do these things, I will not work with you. Versus somebody that's like, hey, there's a problem. Let's just recognize that maybe there's this little issue in America. Because all we have to do is literally look at the facts that our productivity has gone up and up and up, but our pay has stayed the same. So that's the only facts that we're looking at. But when I say that, people get mad. I have actual stats right here, but people still get hot. And that's where it's so funny because I'm just some dude on the internet, right? I'm just some dude on the internet. What I'm saying should not make you emotional. It should not make you upset. In fact, I think most educated people are like, oh yeah, we have been feeling the squeeze lately. Or, oh yeah, I know somebody who's 25 and is looking so hard for a job and they can't find one. I know somebody who's been looking to buy a house for 5 years, but it just keeps going up and up and up. And that's where, Jody, that's where only 30% of people want society to be the way it is. Only 30% of people on the internet want society the way that it is. 70% of this, 70% of us, we don't want this shit. It's just that 30% of people have their thumb, have a billionaire's thumb on the scale. Well, Garden Arts, that's what it should be, right? 30% of people have a billionaire's thumb on the scale. Yep, 25%. Whatever it is, Marcy, we should be happy, right? Because the majority don't want this. So we can change it. It's going to sound silly, but it's like this. Right now, we cannot protest because even if 10 million of us protested tomorrow, the very next day, we'd be going to the same people, grocery stores that we protested. We'd be watching TV on the same channels and televisions of the people that we protested. We'd be watching, we'd be getting our health care from the same people that we protested. We did not vote for it. I would say that over decades and decades, the media and the political process and the economy has been taken from us. Now we don't really have a choice. And so what we need to do is we need to recognize that the power the corporations have over us isn't just that we're divided. The power that the corporations have over us isn't just that we cannot coordinate. We saw 2 million people come together for No Kings. The problem is that the very next day, we rely on them for what we need to live. We go to their doctor's offices, we shop at their stores, we read their newspapers, we're on their computers and their iPhones, and we are on their platforms. So mainly though, the three things we need to live are food, house, and healthcare. Food, housing, and healthcare. Because what we need to do to push back against the system isn't for all of us to come together. It's not to have one big coordination. It's to take back control of the essentials. Because as long as we need to go to them to buy our food, we will always depend on them. As long as we need them to get our health care, we will always depend on them. So what we have to do is recognize that we have to stop depending on corporations because the corporations don't care about you. So we need to start depending on people that do care about us. So who are the people that do care about us? They're the people in your community. Because the people in your community care about what happens to your community. It just goes like this. Corporations don't care about what happens to our community because they're not a part of our community. They see our community as a way to make money. But if we stop relying on the corporations for food, for housing, and for healthcare, and we start the process of obtaining those things from people within our community, then the people that we get what we need to live, our food, our housing, and our healthcare, is the way that to move forward, because then we rely on people who care about us, right? We rely on people who care about us. Instead of right now, we rely on people who actively don't want us to survive. That's what's so funny. Nell goes, never happened. So you want to keep in a system where healthcare companies who you pay your whole life actively deny you coverage for no other reason than it's expensive? You want to live in a world where companies that produce your food just chuck sawdust in there because they want to make more money? I swear a local business that was a part of the community would never put sawdust in your Parmesan cheese. Why? Because they care about the people in your community. I don't even have to make up an analogy for doctors. There are healthcare providers and nurses and doctors in your area, and they hate the insurance company because the insurance company are between you and getting the care that you need. So Nell, were you saying, oh, this will never happen? Just because you are able to have that point of view doesn't mean the rest of us are. I have 2 daughters and I will fight against this for the rest of my life. Not because I think it's going to happen overnight, because I know that the change will take time and we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. That is so right, Kaz. That is so right. One company at a time. How can we stop relying on this company? How can we stop relying on that company? And then eventually you're going to be like, oh, I much prefer this. Because yeah, I'm paying $2 extra, but that $2 extra I pay stays in my community. Because this is what we forget about. Every time we spend money at Walmart, that shit leaves our community. Every time we spend money at the big grocery store, that money leaves our community. Every time we swipe our credit card, 3% leaves the community. So the only way that we can take the power back is by having each other's backs. It's by taking small steps together, because it's not going to happen fast. Thank you, Roberto. I've been meaning to look that up. This will not be over by, next Christmas. This will not be over by then, but we will have joy by then. We will be happy by then, because what this is all of us connecting. We are replacing our reliance on corporation with genuine human connection. We are getting rid of Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, and we're getting to know the people that live on Main Street. And we should all be more pissed, because I think we aren't so pissed because we don't think there's wow, look at us, above average. We're the exact same. I think the only reason we aren't more pissed is because we don't think there's anything to do about it. And I think I'm so freaking pissed because I see all the people that want to do something about it. It's just we have to start small. We have to start understanding that we are building an avalanche. But those first 1,000 snow shovel, or we're building an avalanche shovel by shovel. But those first 1,000 shovels are going to feel like we ain't doing shit. But what it is that more and more people will see us shoveling, and they're going to ask us what we're doing. And then we will say, we are shoveling. And here's why. It just takes one shovel from you just to start relying on your community instead of relying on the corporations. And the way that we start shoveling is we meet here every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. We are live on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So if you are watching us on one, go follow us on the other. Instagram, let's get YouTube up. Go to YouTube. Give me some subscribers to black out the system, because we are building the community that we need to rival the system long term. I think the biggest issue is that many people feel and see the problem, and then we get desperate, right? Neil, that's what we're saying. We're not asking everyone to give up everything. That would be crazy. We're asking people to take small steps together. We're not asking some of us to give it up our all. We're asking everyone to give it some. And y'all, I don't know why I'm talking to him. These are the kind of people that we just cannot care about. Somebody whose head is in the sand. Honestly, I say it like this. If you are in this world right now, and you are looking around at our society, and you are looking around at our economy, and you still can't say, something is a little bit wrong, something seems a little off, not even like anything, but something seems a little off. That's it. Mr. Hilton, same with you. We're not pointing fingers. We think that that is an exercise in futility. We think that the blue team wants to be in charge just as much the red team does. And if they're not in charge, they want the other one, because as long as team blue or team red are in charge, they know they have all the power. So to come in and be like, they're the problem, or they're the problem, is really such an immature viewpoint, because what you're doing is you're actually doing exactly what the ultra wealthy want. Because the problem are the people up top taking more than their fair share. They are just banking on you pointing fingers at Republicans or Democrats and not being able to understand that they are they are both good cop, bad cop, but they work for the same corrupt system. Absolutely, Merci, because what we need to understand is that coming together is literally the only way. We rely on corporations for what we need to live. It will take time, but we just need to rely on each other instead of corporations. And I haven't even given the best part yet, because when we start doing that, it's not like things magically change. What it is that then we no longer have to rely on that 1%. Because let's go back to the bread analogy. America as 10 people that need to make bread to survive. They're 10 people, they made 10 slices of bread, right? 10 people made 10 slices of bread. That one person, that billionaire, they own the oven and they own the ingredients. But Michael, they didn't do the job of taking care of the chickens and collecting the eggs. That billionaire didn't do the job of growing the wheat, processing the plant, separating the wheat from the chaff, and making flour. The billionaire simply brought what was needed. They did not know how to do the work. So they rely on the other 9 employees just as much as the other 9 employees rely on that one person. So together they make 10 slices of bread. How much does everybody get, Michael? Well, one person takes 5 slices of bread. The other 9 people have 5 slices left over. And then y'all are like, well, those workers are just lazy. Those workers just don't know how to budget. No, that one person took more than their fair share. And then they went to the media. And because you're used to the media telling you the truth, when the media lied to you, they got so confused. Oh my God, Michael. This is where I just got to get rid of this person. Everyone is a product of their society. That person literally just said they hated Bill Gates and then said they made the world better. I'll tell you why Bill Gates didn't make the world better. Why, if Bill Gates hadn't done it, somebody else would have come along. So Bill Gates was just lucky to be at the right place at the right time. It was luck of the draw, right? Luck of the draw. Because I love to say this. If Bill Gates was born in Florida, he wouldn't be a billionaire. Bill Gates had to be born in the right location at the exact right moment in history. If he was born 2 years earlier or 2 years later, somebody else would have created the operating system. He had to be born to his family that gave him a huge loan to start the business. And the most important, which he had no control over at all, he was born next to Hewlett Packard, the company that he stole the prototype from for MS-DOS. So Bill Gates had to have all of those things happen exactly perfectly in order for him to become a billionaire. And all we're saying is some of that money should have gone to the regular people that developed computers. Bill Gates didn't make a computer. What did Bill Gates add to society that you think he made all of our lives so much better? You don't think we would have developed operating systems if Bill Gates hadn't developed them? Oh, because Hewlett Packard was literally already developing them. So Bill Gates was literally a product of his society, the same way that Elon Musk had to be born to an emerald mine owner, had to be born as a white person in South Africa, at the exact right time that the internet did not have a payment processor. Y'all don't think that somebody else would have come around and figured out a way to accept credit cards on the internet? Are we really like, oh, look at Elon? And then he went and he bought Tesla from somebody else. and slapped a couple features on an electric car and is now supposed to be the world's first trillionaire because of it. This is what we're saying. Billionaires didn't do it by themselves. Elon Musk didn't invent the car. He didn't invent the electric car. Just like Bill Gates didn't invent the computer. Bill Gates didn't invent software. All they did was add one little thing in a long line of technological and societal innovation. Yet because they got lucky, we are ready to give them $1 trillion. So y'all, this is why we don't care about the 30% that are against us. Because if you literally cannot see that in today's day and age, who cares? Above average, all it is that the rich cooperate, and they cooperate at making us compete, right? They cooperate at making us compete. There's no claim to fame. Stanford, it's so funny why people get mad at me for talking. If you don't like this, you can scroll to another live. But what I would think is that if somebody didn't like this, they'd be like, let me go back to my nice life where houses are cheap, where the cost of living is only 20% of my salary, because that's what it is. Because if everybody was making $5,000 a month, but rent was $1,000, food was $400, and housing and healthcare was $600, and we made $5,000 a month, and we brought it, and we only had to shell out $2,000 a month, we don't need to be talking about this. The problem is that as a business owner with 6 locations and 30 employees, I have a very good vantage point over what is actually happening, right? I am able to see. Larry Ellison was part of a CIA project that first introduced cloud computing, and then Larry Ellison stole what he learned at the CIA and made it into a private company. They had literally released the technology right after he had worked on it, and Larry Ellison got rich based off the technology from our tax dollars. Ken Langone and Larry Ellison and the majority of billionaires nowadays got rich because of the internet, y'all. The internet. The internet was developed by DARPA using our tax dollars. So all of the billionaires' success really comes from a new technology. That new technology was the internet. That new technology made us way more productive. We made more money for the company. But even though the internet made us way more productive for the company didn't pay us any more. So here, this is what we made the company. What we made the company is the blue line. And it went up and up and up because of the internet. We all paid for the internet. It was from DARPA, y'all. But that red line, even though we got more productive, the red line stayed the same. But peculiarly, CEO pay and shareholder reimbursement went up and up and up right at the same line as this graph. That's where people that still have their head in the sand, we don't care. So the only way that we can fix this is by building community. We rely on corporations way too much. We rely on corporations who actively disdain us. We rely on corporations for what we need to live when they will not give us what we need to live, even though we've already paid them for it. Our healthcare, we pay them for our healthcare. Then when it comes time for us to need that procedure, they look at their balance sheets to decide whether they give it to us or not. So I think, Marcy, the only way that we can pull our heads out of our rear ends is by understanding that we have to stop arguing with 20% or 30% of the population that doesn't want this. Who cares? Who cares? Because there's going to be somebody else There are 70 million people that want America the way it is. Well, there's 150 million or 180 million people that don't. So if somebody is fighting you and you say anything like, I just believe that all Americans or all humans have intrinsic value. That's it. So the solution sounds simpler than what it needs to be. We rely on corporations for the essentials. We know that there's more of us than there are them, but as long as we rely on the corporations for the essentials, we'll never get power back. True power is controlling where your food comes from. True power is controlling where your healthcare comes from. And true power is determining your housing. We don't control any of that. We don't control where our food comes from. We don't control where our housing comes from. We don't control where our healthcare comes from. And until we do, we don't have any power. We can't do anything. So our first steps need to be small. We need to be growing our own food so that we can get to a point that we don't have to rely on the corporations. Because what it is, it's not just us growing it. It's there is a farmer, there is a food producer in your area. It's just the corporation's whole business model was to stick themselves between you and that farmer, between you and that food producer. So what we need to do is say, F your stinking business model. We are going to go around you and we're going to, instead of relying on you, corporation, who puts sawdust in our Parmesan cheese, we're going to rely on the farmer to sell us their food directly because they would never screw us over because they're a part of this community and they care about this community. Same for doctors and healthcare providers. There are so many doctors and healthcare providers that care about us, that care about you, that just want to see you get good healthcare. But corporations' whole business model was to stick themselves between you and the healthcare providers that care about you. So we're going to say, screw you, corporation. We are going around you because that doctor in our community cares more about us than you do. And because that person actually cares about the outcomes in our community, I would rather rely on them than rely on you. And let's tie it all in a nice little bow. Let's bring it back to the 10 people baking bread together. Well, if one person takes 5 slices of bread and the other 9 people have to fight over 5 slices of bread, then if that one person controls all what it needed to make bread, they will always control the other people, right? If one person owns everything, they will always control the other 9. So as long as we rely on those corporations for our healthcare, as long as we rely on that corporation for our food, then they will always have power over us because they'll always say, yeah, they're protesting, but they'll come back tomorrow because they don't have anywhere else to get food. Yeah, they're protesting, but they'll come back in 2 days because they have nowhere else to get health care, right? But what if we all could figure out our ways to get food together and not have to rely on corporations? What if we could figure out how to get our health care without relying on corporations? Then when we protest, that one person gets freaking terrified because they're like, shit, before I had the power, because those 9 people relied on me for what they needed to live. Now that those 9 people don't rely on me for what they need to live, I no longer have the power. And now they have the power, not because they protested, not because they coordinated, but because those people control what they need to live. And that's about it. Until we control what we need to live, we will never have the power. So we meet every single Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific to start building the community that we need to rival this rigged system. So that is every single Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We meet to go over this, to start building the community, to start connecting face to face. It literally is crazy that the first step is connecting with other human beings. We understand that literally replacing, what's up, Noni Bear? Literally replacing our reliance and connection with corporations with reliance and connections on fellow humans is the one and only thing that will get us out of this situation. And it's crazy because it's like, well, what's the first step? And I'm like, make friends. But it really is, because we need to stop relying on corporations for what we need to live. So if instead of relying on corporations, we need to rely on people in our neighborhood. But we're not going to rely on strangers, are we? Hell no. So instead of relying on strangers, we make the people that were strangers into our friends. We start connecting with them. And then eventually, when enough of us get together, we can go to the farmer in that area and say, hey, right now you're selling all your food to the corporation. What if you sold a bit back to your community? Because there are 20 of us that want to buy and eat your food directly from you. We don't want to have to go through the corporation. So boom, now you've got a farmer that you can get your food from. And then maybe you find a couple healthcare providers and you find the same thing, direct care model, where you tell them, hey, we are sick of using the corporations just to see people in our community for healthcare. What if we got together and we paid you and you came and saw us? Absolutely. Marcy, that's where whether it's tenant unions coming together and making sure that when we come together, we have the power over that landlord, because one person not paying rent is problem for the tenant, but 100 people not paying rent is problem for the landlord. And that's what we're coordinating. That's all we're doing, is a mass withdrawal from the system, because we need to shift the balance of power. The only way we shift the balance of power is not by protesting, is not by coordinating. It's by taking back control of the essentials. So that's where our first steps have to be small steps every day to take back control of the essentials, our food and our healthcare. And once we start building a little bit of a community, we start building up tenants unions and housing unions. And we make sure that we control what we need to live, because that is the power. Thank you, Noni Barrett. Yeah, I'm dropping the link, y'all. Join the Discord if you want. Brad Wolf, that's what this is. We are not asking for the system to change. That is fucking futile. We're building a new system. We're building a new system, and then we have to rely on each other. And the only way we can rely on each other is if we stop being strangers. Y'all, the corporations rely on us being strangers. So the first thing you can do is make human connection. Garden Arts, I literally watched It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve, and I was like, oh, this is why. Well, I mean, there's so many factors. It's a Wonderful Life. It's Bugs movie, or it's Ants, or A Bug's Life. Sorry, It's a Wonderful Life, A Bug's Life. It's the fact that my dad had his own small business where he busted his ass for corporations that made millions of dollars. My mom was a pharmaceutical sales representative that from 1980 to 2000 got showered with bonuses. And then as soon as the company stopped taking care of the people that made them money, it made all of our lives difficult. The rug got pulled out from under us. Then, as I'm going into college, the 2008 financial crisis happens. And then most of all, I start my own business. I see that it cannot, that any company, any employee, any employer, anywhere cannot grow on their own. I wanted to open up my second location. Well, this may seem hard to believe, but I can't be in two places at once. I had to hire someone else if I wanted to open my second location. How can you not say that I relied on those people to continue making more money? The only way I could make more money was to rely on it. Faye, it's not going to happen overnight, but I don't think you joined the Discord and built the connections, because that's what it is. Yeah, if you just go out in your area, god damn, it's going to be tough. But what if you meet 5 people here? I am in Maryland, T-Bays. I am looking for some fellow Marylanders. We just got our first one in the Discord, and I'm looking for some more Marylanders. So if you're in Maryland, come join that Discord link. I am the state coordinator for Maryland. So let me go into a little bit how it works. What we're doing is we meet every single Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern for our national group, right? So that is our big group meeting. But the point of the group is to actually break out by state. That's the point of it. So that every single state is able to meet people in your area. So you can meet people in your area and actually start affecting local change. Maybe you'll be loud and start pushing back against the system. Maybe you'll start building your own system. Maybe you'll find other movements to link in with. Whatever it is, we've got the same couple of teams in every single state. Places that you can put your skills and passion and hard work to work. No, it's over Zoom. And then T-Bays. Eventually, I am hoping to hold it in person. So that's where I am in the Baltimore area. And what we would do is that basically we say, all right, everybody, this week we're having an in-person citizens assembly. And that's another way. So it's like we start connecting online. We start connecting in the Discord. And then after we've connected a little bit, then maybe we go to a local farmer's market. Or if you're in Baltimore, there's a bookstore, or Harford County. We go meet somewhere. We say, hey, there's this library, and we're all meeting at the library. And then TB, you and I and whoever else wants to, we go, all right, we're live broadcasting the Citizens Assembly this week from this library. Because T-Bays, the whole thing we're trying to do is then get other people to realize that, whoa, if they're meeting in person out in Maryland, I could meet in person in Texas. I could meet in person in Oregon. And then we have people all across the country, not only talking about what's wrong, but building what is right. And imagine if thousands of us all across the country just started saying, well, I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm going to start small. And I'm going to start reducing my reliance on corporations. And I'm going to do that little by little, maybe finding some food that I can buy locally that's the same price, that's not more expensive because I'm getting it directly from the food producer. Maybe it's getting clothes or items secondhand through a market swap or somewhere like that. And if everybody started doing that, we'd all be walking in the same direction. Now imagine if we all had a place where we could meet every single week to exchange ideas, to swap strategies, to build the community and the habits that we need to make real, long-term, lasting change. This is why diet and exercise groups do so well, because other people show up. We know that we have other people there that are rooting for us. We know that we are all working together in our own self-interest. Well, too much passion, Bernie Burns? Too much passion? We aren't mad enough, is what I say. We are not mad enough because they have taken our lives from us. They have taken our lives. Because what we have to understand is that you don't control what you need to live. You don't control your food. They literally put sawdust in your food. And Bernie Burns thinks that I'm too passionate that corporations tried to trick you into eating sawdust. We pay them for our health care every single month. And then when we go to use the very thing that we pay them for, they check their bank accounts, they check their balance sheets to see if how much money they want to make that quarter, because they don't care whether we live or not. They care whether they hit their quarterly bonuses. Oh, but Bernie Burns thinks I'm being too passionate, that somebody will let your grandparent no longer live so that they can get their bonus, right? They can get their bonus. Oh, well, I'm sorry, Bernie Burns, that I'm not the exact archetype that you would like. I would say for the last 70 minutes of this 2 hour and 20-minute live, I have been very tame and have been explaining the problem. And I've spent all this time making sure that everybody had the same diagnosis, because if we are not all looking at the same problem, we will all come towards different solutions. Now that we are at the end where I've laid out the problem and we've diagnosed the disease, I am now talking about the steps that we need to take to fix it. And apologies if, as I'm taking the time to explain the steps that we need to reduce our reliance on corporations and take the power back so that we and our children and our families and our communities can have nicer lives, that makes me excited, and you don't like it. I don't care. I don't care. Tom, you literally just don't understand. The blackout is about building a community large enough to rival the rig system. It's not just about hitting the corporations where they hurt, because if you're an intelligent person, you would always understand that a 1-week boycott against a century-old multinational corporation is probably not going to bring them down. But what that 1-week boycott does is it shows people that when we act together, we have the power. What that 1-week boycott does is it forces people to take a week to examine where they are purchasing things so that they can stop getting them from a corporate store and start getting them from a local store. And yeah, maybe most people will go back to their old ways right afterwards. But what we are banking on is that at least a significant portion will stop relying on those corporations long term and start relying on the local options instead. And that's what we see happening right now. Well, that's good, Tom. That's where you simply don't understand. Thanks, Noni Bear. I know, passionate about wanting my daughters to be able to work hard and actually live a life. Like, imagine that, working 40 hours a week. And I don't know, maybe you should be able to afford food if you're working 40 hours a week, right? I don't know. Maybe that's good. Maybe I don't want to be the first generation in our country's history to be worse off than our parents. So yeah, we're talking about it. And the funniest part is that all that we say is that, hey, we're working harder than ever and still falling farther behind. And man, people get pissed. Man, people get pissed because they know it's true. Like, Tom Tiger comes in here almost every day, almost every time we're here. And man, we'd make Tom Tiger mad. But I don't understand it. Because if you had such a nice life, then why don't you go back to it where all the people can afford houses? Because what it really is it's a math problem. A nice life is when you make $5,000, but then life only costs you $2,000. So you have savings in between. And Tom, we know that doesn't happen. That's fine. Well, and that's fine, Tom. You're welcome to continue boosting our live by commenting. Anytime you stay longer than 30 seconds, it helps. Anytime you leave and come back, it helps. Pretty much just your presence here helps us. So we appreciate you supporting this movement day after day, Tom. Not only are you there, you're commenting, you're shooting us up on the algorithm. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Because eventually, if you stay here long enough, you will, what I know from people like you is that you have sucked up the propaganda from the 1% for a really long time. And actually, your pride is so wrapped into you being special that when we say that the system benefited people and gave disadvantages out to others, you get really upset. So What are you talking about, maple syrup? Quick, depending on socialism to fix things. The government works for the billionaires. Socialism is literally what our government is engaging in right now. Socialism would be where the government picks winners and losers. Trump's administration has purchased stocks in no less than 10 companies. They are literally implementing socialism now. So, maple syrup, I'm sorry, but you are vastly misinformed. The problem is, I know that was very confusing because you literally were like, socialism is bad. And then you said, we need to work together within communities, which is socialism. All socialism says is that, hey, communities' health is just a community needs to be healthy in order for a business to be healthy. That's it. That's all socialism says. A community needs to be healthy in the case for a businesses to be healthy. But the problem is now is that corporations are so large that they don't rely on any one of our individual communities. So they don't care about our communities. So they treat us like crap so that they can make more money. So the problem is, that's where we'll just move on. So if you are feeling this, if you are working harder than ever and still falling farther behind, hop into the Discord. Every single Sunday, we meet at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, because that's how we start building the community that we need to take on the rig system. Because it's really kind of simple. The corporations have control or the corporations have power because they control what we need to live: our food, our housing, and our healthcare. Until we're the ones that take back control of our essentials, we will never have power over them because we always will rely on them for our food, our housing, and our healthcare. So in order to take back power, in order to shift the balance of power, we need to stop relying on the corporations and start relying on each other. But right now, we're all strangers, y'all. We're all strangers. So in order to start relying on each other, we need to stop being strangers. We need to build that human connection. We need to come together and understand that our first steps have to be small steps together, because the whole goal of shifting the balance of power is to reduce our reliance on corporations so we no longer have to participate in the system. The moment we don't have to participate in the system, the power flips and we become the ones in charge. And at that point, that's when we're